Okay, I want to make a quick video today while Hazel's eating lunch here. I'm at the kitchen counter, so sorry about the mess behind. I feel like I'm always apologizing for the mess behind me. Basically, my house is never that clean, so there you go. Secret's out. Today, I was just talking with a client, and she was commenting on how she's struggling with trying to balance her food out throughout the day. And I totally remember this in recovery. I remember having so many flipping rules that making food decisions was so overwhelming and so stressful. It felt like I was playing a game of Tetris. It felt like I was constantly, each time I ate, I was having to think back to what I ate before, because I wasn't allowed to eat the same food twice. Bread was forbidden more than once in a day, if ever. Even I remember deli meat. If I wanted to put deli meat in my eggs in the morning, then I couldn't have a deli sandwich in the afternoon. Or if I wanted to have French toast for breakfast, then no sandwich for lunch. If I was having pizza for dinner, I couldn't have a sandwich at lunch, right? You see how many foods at breakfast involve bread, at lunch involve bread, and at dinner can involve bread. So when you have a rule like that, right, it's very restrictive and it becomes very stressful for you to try to decide, what am I going to eat? So she said that she'd been, recognizing that this was an issue, she wasn't really sure how to break through it. And it got me thinking about my own recovery, and I remembered some things that I did, some practical tools that I put into place that sound very childish and that were sort of a game I played with my eating disorder. One of them was, I got a jar, 3 jars. One had breakfast, a lunch, and a dinner label on it. And the breakfast, I would write down a bunch of just very challenging breakfasts for me, several different options. And then same thing for lunch, same thing for dinner. And I wouldn't draw out of that jar until it was time for breakfast, right? So I wouldn't pick it the night before and be oh, well, here's my breakfast and here's my lunch and here's my dinner. I would pick it right as it was time to eat breakfast. I'd pull it out and be okay, looks like I'm making French toast, eggs, and a glass of orange juice with some bacon. Okay, doing that now, right? And then I would let myself eat my snacks in between, whatever I wanted. And then lunchtime would come and I'd pull out of the jar and it would be okay, club sandwich. And then my brain would go crazy and it'd be okay, club sandwich, but you already had bread earlier and you can't do that again. And then what if you have this and then it has mayonnaise and bacon and cheese and avocado? And then what if you pick for lunch, you're having burritos and then there's avocado in the burritos, and then I can't do that because then the tortilla with the carbohydrates, too many. And my brain would just be crazy, right? So the first few days that I did this were terrifying, but good for me to realize, holy crap, I have so many flipping rules. I have so many rules. No wonder I feel so overwhelmed in my recovery, because I'm going through the motions and eating more and rehabilitating my body. But if I'm being honest, I'm not actually breaking that many rules. And it wasn't until I started doing things like this that actively forced me to rewire these fears. So I highly recommend that you do that. If you and she commented, which is a great point, if you find yourself writing out your options and all of them are the same amount of food, right? The same, if you're still doing calories in your head and you're still trying to match each breakfast item so it's similar, have someone that knows you well, whether they live with you or not, have them write out those options. But only do this if they truly understand the amounts of food you need to be eating and the types of food that actually scare you. Don't give this to someone that's completely oblivious to eating disorders and then they're going to give you some very restrictive breakfast. So be smart about that. But if you have someone like that you're oh, my mom really knows me well, or my boyfriend totally gets it, he's really good about this, he'd be a good one to ask, then do that. And then another one would be, if you're living at home, a lot of my clients are still living at home, and their parents make dinners, right? So they don't have to worry about making dinner. But I would challenge you, if you're used to asking, what are we having for dinner tonight, to stop doing that. Again, so you're not planning your entire day around what it is that you're having for dinner that night. And then another thing that I did, gosh, I remember all these silly little games that I had to do to tick off my eating disorder, and my eating disorder hated it. But guess who came out ahead? Guess who won that battle? Me, because I did these hard things. So the other thing I did was I'd go to a restaurant, and I took myself out for lunch every day for a very long time in my recovery. So I would go to a restaurant and I'd be I'm picking the 5th item on the list. whatever that is. The fifth thing is what I'm getting, you know. So it's like a sandwich shop, and there's like 20 different sandwich options, and I just go fifth. That's what I'm getting. And the only time I let myself off the hook was if it was something very spicy. I cannot tolerate any spice. Otherwise, I had to get it, and I couldn't modify it, right? So I couldn't be like, oh, okay, meatball sandwich, hold the cheese and light on the salt. Like I couldn't modify it. It was just that's what I was getting, and that's what I had to eat. It was really good because it took so much control out of me having to like overthink and overanalyze and try to balance everything out. That yeah, it was terrifying. I'm not gonna lie. But those are the kinds of situations you need to put yourself in if you expect your brain to stop behaving and believing all of these rules that you have created over months, years, decades, however long it is that you struggle with your eating disorder. You have to do the opposite, and these are just kind of some tools to help you to do that. So if you're listening to this and you're like, this woman's crazy, yeah, freaking right. You can keep thinking that and thinking that I'm crazy, but that is actually what I did to recover. So I'm just sharing personal experiences that helped me to rewire. I don't know how I would have gotten over that whole balancing act in my head rule if I wouldn't have done things like that. So if you have any other things that you've done that you're like, hey, I did this and this really helped, or hey, I'm working on this and it seems to really be helping me rewire some of these rules, like please leave those in the comments. That's like the more the merrier, right? The more practical things that people can implement to help them to be able to break down all of these rules that the eating disorder has created, the better. So best of luck and hope you have a good day.